Okay, my name is Daniel Cowan. I'm the founder of Big Star Lights. For those of you who don't know me, I got into Christmas lights almost 20 years ago, hanging them from my little Volkswagen Jetta and then growing it well into the seven figures. I have an amazing team there, and together, we've learned some pretty incredible lessons along the way, and I'm excited to share them with you. Before we dive too deep, I want to welcome people to join the Big Star Lights community, which is now officially launched. We're really excited about this one. It's a platform where myself and other like-minded pro installers get to share knowledge and learn from each other's experiences. It's free. It includes access to training that is great for new hires, as well as participation in these live streams like this one. We have bi-weekly community calls too, where we get to sit down and discuss anything from your quotes to marketing to product to operations, and we really want you to accelerate your growth. It's really kind of silly to tackle this business on your own, and so this is a great place where you can do this with others as well. We're offering premium membership too, with access to discounts of 20% off. The membership is $4.99 per year. There's monthly rate available as well. And we have a discount right now for 15% off until the end of July with a code LAUNCH15. So I encourage you to have a look there. Let me see if I can get this link up into the... Well, there we go. Let's put it in here. This is the link. If you go here, you can sign up for the premium membership. We also launched our latest tool there, a resources section there, which I really encourage you to check out. And the tool that we just launched is a holiday lighting load calculator. One of the biggest questions we get asked is, how much electricity can I run through these wires? And this calculates it for you just by entering in some lengths and the type of product that you're using. It's available to all the community members. And I believe that one's free as well. Check out some of the other tools that we have in there, like a canopy wrap calculator, if you're ever wondering how many lights you should throw at a tree. We'll be adding more tools throughout the year as well. So today, we're going to discuss operational efficiency, and we'll begin with metrics, what's important and how to get your team amped up on these numbers without overwhelming them. And then we'll discuss symptoms of inefficient operations and many of the mistakes I've made before. We'll compare how different life is when you move from a hustle work environment to a systemized one. And we'll touch on one of the most important tools for achieving that, which is the standard operating procedures. Of course, operations aren't smooth unless you have a solid team. So we'll discuss what to look for in people that is unique to the holiday lighting business and how to bring them into the fold of your organization. And lastly, we'll do a little math to figure out what size of team you're going to need to hit your revenue goals this year and where to focus your attention. All right, so let's get started. What gets measured gets improved. And when a season is as short as the Christmas light season, if you don't know what your temperatures are in near almost real time, it will be too late to make any adjustments and test any of those adjustments until next year. It's really important to have those numbers. And so let's start off a little bit of financial metrics. So we have, the classics of your revenue and cost of goods sold in order to calculate your gross profit. I like to break down the residential and commercial because they have different marketing strategies and it helps to establish future budgets. So separating those is a good idea. Cost of goods sold can be broken down into product, labor, excluding management, and just your just your installers, and then equipment. So when it's worthwhile to invest in maybe your own equipment or just keep renting. Miscellaneous items like flaggers and other random items that might be charged out can go in a miscellaneous line. And of course, revenue minus your cost of goods sold is equal to your gross profit, and the industry typically sees gross margins in the 50 to 60% range. So that's gross. Okay, that's gross before the fixed expenses. We have to take that into consideration. So if your business sits there, does nothing, this is what you'll burn. This is the sieve of your business. So if you are not filling it faster than it's draining, you are not going to last. And there are more common, or these are some of the more common fixed expenses that we see here. Auto, bank charges, licenses, computer, internet, insurance, all the way down to management fees for your payroll. Like if you're paying yourself, that would go under that line item. Then of course you got rent and utilities, repairs, maintenance, travel, and professional fees. Of course, marketing is a big one too. Of course, profit is just revenue minus your cost of goods sold. So that's your gross profit minus your fixed expenses. So that's an important metric, obviously, to follow throughout the season. But there's a number of other important metrics that are not so obvious, and we'll go over here. And what I've learned are important based on experience. So leads and estimates, I like to measure those. I like to track both in terms of quantity and also in terms of total value, because it allows me to predict the future. If you total all your leads, and you can just guess what your leads are worth at this point. If it's a small house, maybe it's only $1,500. If it's a big house, maybe it's $5,000. Just put a number in there. And you can expect, and if you expect to close 10% of the leads, you'll have a pretty good idea of where you're going to end up in terms of revenue. That number, 10%, by the way, can be adjusted each year based on historical values. So if last year you found yourself closing 8% of your leads, then you can change that for the coming season. Once estimates are sent, you'll typically close about 30% of them. That's if you're doing on-site consultations. If you're not, and I don't encourage you to not do on-site consultations, you're going to do a lot worse. So you definitely need to get on site, show them the lights, talk about the designs, show them pictures, and get that done in person. If you're closing 50%, you're probably leaving money on the table and not charging enough. If you are closing less than 30%, maybe have a closer look at your sales process. And obviously at the estimate 1 stage, you can expect near 100% of that revenue to come to fruition. It's also helpful to compare how fast you are completing the jobs through the season and compare it to what's forecasted. But then by referencing your calendar, you'll be able to see where you'll end up. So white space, or which I define as the number of crew days that are unscheduled, is also an important indicator or key performance indicator. If you are booking weeks in advance in the peak season, you might not be charging enough. If you are only booking just a few days in advance, you might be charging too much, or more likely the case, you haven't communicated the value proposition well enough. And so white space has a value. And typically with each crew averaging between, say, $2,000, $3,000 a day or so, that's for maybe more of a repeat job. So if you don't fill it, that's your lost opportunity cost. And white space is also a gauge of how well your marketing and sales pipeline are performing. So if you have a lot of white space, it's not doing too well. So those are another important metric to measure. I also like to measure your budgeted hours versus your actual hours. It's important to track that, especially for the installers. They need to know if they are performing well or not. If they are behind and you've hired people with the right mindsets, they'll typically work faster if they know this number. And if they, especially if they know how long it should take them. It really spawns self-evaluation, and it also can alert you to any quoting errors and gaps in your training. Now, there's one other really important metric that I like to measure, and that is called the utilization rate. It's the silent killer of margins. This is to measure, how efficient your installer operation is. It measures how much time is not being billed. So time that's out, this is time that's out of your pocket and directly affecting your bottom line. Examples of this would be like driving time, preparation time, meetings, they all contribute to low utilization rates, which is just, your billable hours divided by payroll. That's what that is. And so a poor utilization rate is definitely a margin killer. The immediate symptoms are, lots of overtime being clocked in. Jobs are taking longer in the calendar while budgeted and actual installation times mostly match. Unbillable maintenance also sinks your utilization rate. So you've got to use really high quality products that are designed for your climate and try to, maybe send one person instead of two out for your maintenance calls. Otherwise, you're just, sinking your utilization rate twice as fast. Most maintenance is a one-person job unless there's a serious safety issue to consider, like managing traffic or something like that. So metrics that drive sales are important to track and show to your team. I like to use a name board for friendly competition. Metrics to track and build a strong sales culture are upsells, how many yard signs have been placed, door knockers placed. I also like to add a little spot on the door knockers for the person or the installer to put their name in, and then ask the people that they're hanging on to mention the name when they reach out. Referrals made and also Google reviews are a good one to measure, and incentivize these metrics with bonuses. They are well worth the investment. Many business owners shy away from sharing their numbers with the team. I have the opposite opinion and share numbers with my team from the top all the way down to the bottom. And the idea is to engage employees in thinking and acting like owners by giving them the numbers and teaching them how to influence those numbers. And so here are the pros and cons for sharing financial systems and metrics. And one of them is increased transparency and trust. When employees see the real numbers, they know leadership isn't hiding anything. And it builds a culture of honesty and mutual respect. Employee engagement and ownership mentality. Staff start thinking like owners, making decisions that consider profit, waste, and efficiency. They're more motivated to hit goals when they understand it. Improving decision-making is also a pro for showing the numbers. Teams who understand costs and margins can make better decisions every day. For example, route planning, material use, upselling. This helps reduce poor decisions made in a vacuum. One thing that's really important to drive home is that your installers will often see problems first because they're boots on the ground. And if motivated to act on it, you can be a much more nimble organization, which is particularly important in a very short season. Focus on what really moves the needle. So what I mean by that is focus on key drivers or the critical numbers that impact the bottom line. And this helps align day-to-day actions with company goals. So you can change the critical number each week. For example, if you're finding not enough lawn signs are getting put out, say the team's critical number is this week 100 lawn signs, and then celebrate when they achieve 100 lawn signs put out that week. Team-based problem solving. Employees are more likely to collaborate to hit financial targets when they know the scoreboard. It builds a sense of shared success and accountability as well. And then there's also a bonus here where financial literacy is developed in your team. So you're going to train them on how to read and interpret financials, which is actually a valuable asset to employees, both personally and professionally. Now, there are some cons that I hear all the time about sharing everything and having an open book policy, and that is misinterpretation of the data. Without training, employees may panic and misunderstand what it is that they're seeing. They're maybe like, we made $500,000 last month. Why didn't we get a raise? And so to counter that, you want to educate them, and which is really important on what that number means. Exposing weaknesses or losses. Now, if a company is struggling, exposing the financial pain points might create fear or disengagement. But to counter that, really involving people in the solution helps build the buy-in as well. Competitive or confidential concerns is another big one. And some owners feel sensitive financial information could leak to competitors. The counter to that is, if you just share the summary level data, so not like the full financial statement, but just the really big heavy hitter numbers, and then you can share that and start building a culture of internal trust as well. Yeah. So to really combat these cons, you want to educate continuously. Build the financial literacy into your system, really simplify the numbers, like focus on the key drivers, not full income statements. And, make this a game, tie the financials to a game. Teams love to rally around a critical number and set rewards for hitting targets. And build this gradually too. Like start by sharing limited data and then expand as the understanding grows. If you start throwing too many metrics at them, they'll become overwhelmed by the information. A must-read book on this topic, by the way, is called The Great Game of Business. It teaches not just how to share financials for the sake of openness, but it teaches teams to use them as tools to win. And when it's done right, it transforms your team from just clock punchers into strategic partners in growing both profit and impact. So a little bit of a book drop there. I recommend it. All right, so next let's talk about symptoms of inefficient operation. More jobs does not necessarily equal more profit. If operations are flawed, it actually results in less profit. And revenue is really a product of jobs times efficiency times quality. So if one of those is zero, your revenue will go to zero as well. Pitfalls of inefficient operation include burnt hours, costly callbacks, and lost opportunities. Keep this in mind. This has always resonated with me. Is that because our season's so short, one day lost because of a mistake or some operational deficiency is 3% of your revenue from that crew gone for the season. It's such a short season. And, if you lose just half a day, which has happened many times to me before, that's 1.5% gone from the top line revenue. So if you start to break it down that granularly, you really start to see the impact and why it's so important to invest in a really efficient system for your business. So we'll get into that in a moment. Have you ever heard this before? You can't outwork a broken system. And I've learned this the hard way. In an installation company, I tried until about the $250,000 mark. I was like, I'll just muscle through this. And then it plateaued. And then for every additional $50,000 that was added to that season's revenue, it seemed about like double the stress. And I found myself on this continuous precipice from October through December. I was a hustler and the results were just total chaos. I had lots of questions coming at me from all angles, both employees and from customers, numerous missed calls, delayed email responses, lost sales opportunities, which I have no idea how I could quantify, just lots of dollars missed. Frustrated customers obviously is not a great thing. And, I was burning out. I was absolutely just on my back by the end of the season and always just felt really far behind. So then I started to really systemize things. Checklists were, I formed checklists for everything. So like training, vehicle walkarounds, vehicle tools, like what tools they should be in there, making sure they've got it all. Checklists for the minimum products that should be stocked in each of the vehicles. Checklists for the site safety check, like walking around, making sure that nobody's in danger. And then another checklist after the install is finished, just to make sure everything is done properly and there are no mistakes are made, and hopefully we don't have to go back there again until removal time. So checklists are key. And actually one of the on the docket here for our resources section, we're going to start to throw up a bunch of checklists for you here in the near future, so we'll be able to leverage those. I use CompanyCam. That was a game changer app for me as well. And for installer communications, it's way easier to communicate through photos than it is through words or descriptions. And so I encourage you to check that out. And then implement, we Slack messaging or some quick messaging is great because then everything's on record as opposed to just texting people back and forth, which could get a little bit chaotic if there's a lot of staff. Leveraging AI to automate lead follow-ups is really great. And man, I can't tell you, the tools that are coming out now are just incredible. Email responses done ahead of time, that'll save you loads of time. So for everything, I'm talking everything from initial inquiries to just a simple response for a late installer arrival. Just have everything in there. And then within a few punches of the keyboard by anyone in the company, you'll be able to send the right response in the desired tone that you want. So there's some great apps out there for that. One of my favorites is TextBlaze, but I know I think Google and some of the other platforms out there are starting to have their own abilities to create numerous templates. But Text is cool because it's easy to share. CRMs out there also have some templates as well. Once I introduced these systems, including a system for actually gathering reviews, we had improved customer satisfaction by quite a lot. And so where are all these systems documented? That's going to be in a detailed set of SOPs. And so topics can include preseason preparation and include, what to do for client site evaluations, design and layout planning, job staging, and installation procedures, how to manage the power and what you're going to do for the final walkthrough, maintenance, takedowns, emergency weather protocol. We're talking everything. What do you do when you have an employee who's injured, and how do you file an incident report? How do you handle the warranties, and what the marketing campaigns are, when they happen, and what's sent out? All that planned ahead of time. And you'll use this year after year. And I promise you, it's going to look fairly different in your second year and your third year and your fourth year. This is an ever evolving document. So make it something that is easily editable. You could do it in Google Docs, another app out there called Notion. That's another great one for doing this kind of thing. And it's very important to have a detailed set of SOPs. And you know what, honestly, even if nobody looks at it very closely, for you to go through that exercise of breaking everything down into really small chunks will give you just unparalleled understanding of your business, and you'll be able to react so much quicker and make improvements a lot quicker as well. I've made a lot of operational mistakes in my days, to say the least. I still do. And joining the community is a great place to learn from others' mistakes. That way, hopefully you don't have to make them all yourself. It'll save you a lot of money. A few that I've made numerous times are, saying yes to everything. Like this picture here, there's this giant 50-foot tree on the left. We said yes to it, not having ever done one before. It was pretty intimidating, but there are other trees on the property that were part of that contract. So if the tree went sideways or something bad happened with the tree, at least we have a fighting chance of making it up on some regular tree lights in the area. And so that I felt the risk was acceptable in case it didn't. But fortunately, that tree worked out really well. But that's kind of the only time where you might consider doing a weird project. Whereas if there's some fighting chance that if it does go bad on you, that you can make it up other ways, or maybe you build in a big buffer. Also, a mistake I've made is focusing too much on C and D clients. So every year you categorize clients A, B, C, and D, and then you have a look at that list and you decide, okay, who's important here? Where are we the most profitable, and where are we having the most satisfied customers? And that becomes your A group. And then you segment your group and ask that question for each segment, and you'll start to figure out who really focus on. Make maybe 80% of your marketing towards the A and B customer, and just don't worry about the C and D. They'll come through the door if you really want to. Or maybe you fill your entire schedule up with A and B customers, which would be great. And then you won't have to decorate C and D, who might be less profitable. Not delegating enough is another mistake I've made. And I use the 80-20 rule. It's one of my favorite rules. So if somebody can do the job 80% as well as you can, it's time to delegate to that person. And you just repeat that over and over and over again. And that way you'll be continuously able to focus on what your strengths are. Another mistake that's often made is offering too many products. Lots of different ones. So for example, keep the product offering simple for scaling. Maybe choose G30s or C9 bulbs, but not offering both. It just makes things unnecessarily complicated when they look fairly similar. There's little things like that can really simplify your system when you start to scale. And, preparing the season too late is another one. This one still catches me, and maybe I'll never feel ready once the season gets going, but not once have I ever said, I think I started preparing too early this year. You're never saying that. Just start early and do the best you can so that you have your operations and procedures and your equipment and your tools and your hiring all lined up before day one of your installations. Hiring the wrong people is another common mistake. This is pretty standard in most businesses, where you hire a person you think is right, but you maybe just put them in the wrong position. I've hired the wrong people, but I've also hired the right people and made the mistake of putting them in the wrong position or seat. Not realizing this early enough can be a costly mistake, resulting in frustrations on both sides. And so I want to talk a little bit more about hiring, because I think it's a really significant part of operational efficiency. Efficiency comes down to how strong your team really is. Great installs start with great people. And the Christmas light industry is not a particularly high skilled business like a tech startup. But so I like to hire on skills or traits that I can't train. And so the traits that I like, first one is a winner mindset. So past winners are often our future performers. So you want to look for both professional and personal achievements, and then they might have a winner mindset. They also want people who are obsessed. As obsessive people are self-driven to excellence. And it doesn't have to be job related. A favorite interview question that I have is, what was the last thing you couldn't stop doing even if you tried? Or what were you obsessed about? And if they can't think of anything, then there may not be an obsessive personality. But a lot of people should be able to think of something that they're really passionate about. So dive into that a little bit and get under the skin. A good person is obviously important to have on the team. Good people attract good teams. I focus more on character than, resume. And, conversely, bad people attract other bad people. So it's really important to get it right, because if you start getting some bad apples in there, you're going to get a whole bunch of rotten ones pretty quick. And in the heat of the season, it might be too late to train or replace new people, and you end up being in a bad spot. You also want proactive people. Growth requires self-starters who seek solutions. And so you want these type of people. And leaders are also a really great hire. As you grow, you're going to want some of your team to start guiding other installers. And leaders, great, because they have this uncanny ability to communicate vision and potentially help bring that vision to life. So look for that in your hiring as well. They're worth their weight in gold. So in the interviews, let candidates do most of the talking. I let them do maybe 90% of the talking. Use the same questions in all your interviews, because then you can rank fairly, and it's just easier to compare if you're asking the same questions. And if you hire right, you're going to have fewer issues. You're going to have better installs and a magical experience for your customers every year. When it comes to installers, though, you can also leverage their strengths. So, you might find somebody that is comfortable with heights. Maybe they're very safety conscious. They can scale a ladder really confidently. And maybe they're very physically strong. That would be a good person to send up for roof lines. So if you have a big roof line job, send that person. If you have a really detail-oriented person, perhaps they're an artist, or they just have this massive attention to detail and they're considerate. Bonus if they have lift experience, then I would put that person on trees and try to assign that person trees as much as possible through the season. If you have a person who's really analytical and they also have attention to detail, but they understand electricity or eager to learn about it, that would be my extension cording person. So when these people show up to the job site, the extension cording person is immediately going straight to the extension cords and wiring up the place as efficiently and quickly as possible. If it's a roof line, then if you have a good roof line person, that person's going straight up onto the roof. If it's a tree, the tree person's going straight to the tree. Eventually, they'll start to finish at different times, at which point they're going to start helping each other out because they can all do each other's jobs as well. But really leverage the strengths, and you'll find that you'll beat your budgeted installation times quite frequently by doing this, because they become hyper experienced and great at the particular niche of the installation, or niche, some people call it. Let's talk a little bit about meetings. Meetings are important. There's some meetings to include in your organization to make sure your team is on the same page. My favorite meetings are the pre-production meetings. So that's a meeting to discuss the install, review the pictures, what goes where, what product's being used, any equipment considerations. That's your pre-production meeting, absolutely mandatory. Otherwise, whoever did the quote is going to have to go out there and meet them on the job site, which that person may not be able to be everywhere at the same time. It might be you. and you've got other important things to do. So pre-production meetings is important. You can do post-production meetings as well. This is more common for really large scale jobs. So after a week of installing on a property, you want to review, okay, what would we be doing different next year, and take some notes while things are fresh in the mind. Weekly team meetings are also critical, and this is with management and installers. The format I like to follow is starting off with any good news. You always want to start things on a positive note, review the metrics, which we talked about earlier, and then the discussion items. And you don't have to get through all of them, but just rank them and get through the top ones and really try to keep it on topic. With the weekly installer meetings, you want to include a safety topic as well and record that and have everybody sign that. Having weekly tailgate meetings, we call them, are important so that everybody's thinking safety each week. And an example might be, okay, let's discuss ladders. What's the appropriate slope of a ladder and why, and what things can we do to make the ladder more secure on the side of the building. So that could be an example of a safety topic. So have one topic like that lined up again ahead of time in your operations manual or in your operations, in your SOPs, and talk about each one of those topics every week. Another weekly meeting is one with just the operations team, which will be management only. Again, just talking about good news metrics. We might be a bit more expanded on the metrics and including sales information and obviously discussion items, and then finish off with the action items. So who's responsible for what and what they need to come back to the table with next week and hold them accountable. Post-installation season and post-removal season debriefs. These are great meetings to have. This is where everybody gets to put their 2 cents in on what was learned, and you'll take those notes and heavily consider them for next year. And that's how you start to tweak your business and get it more and more efficient every year. And it doesn't stop. Like, I've been involved in a Christmas light installation business for almost 20 years, and there's still things that you're learning, which is exciting for you because I'm on the community calls that we have on as well, and I'm always happy to share any information on there. All right. So celebrations are equally important as meetings. Celebrate the critical numbers that were achieved, to celebrate milestones. A season kickoff is a great way to break the ice at the beginning of the season, especially if there's some new faces. And a post-installation season celebration, a Christmas light party, that's a critical one. This has been one of the biggest contributors to our ability to have returning installers. So throw a good and responsible party, and it'll make it memorable. And it's a great way to finish off a season. A post-removal season celebration is really important as well too. So for planning, we have one crew, so 2 people, will typically generate about $40,000 to $65,000 a month. A full season, so maybe 3 months for one crew, that will generate about $150,000 to $200,000 of revenue every year. So that's equivalent of about 70 residential or 17 commercial installations. If your goal is about $1 million, then you're going to need about 4 crews, so about 8 people from, say, the period of about September to February. And that's the equivalent of about 400 residential jobs or, say, 100 commercial jobs. The reason why I broke it down into either residential or commercial there, like commercial, I'd say average ticket would be about $10,000. On a residential, the average ticket is about $2,500. You can very quickly see, how much work it takes to manage a residential versus a commercial. It is actually quicker to scale your business when you start introducing commercial jobs into your portfolio as well. Try to break into that space. We've got a great strategy session. If you check it out, about 2 months ago, I think we did, on commercial work. So have a look at that. Once you get to about 3 to 4 crews, that's when at that point you want to start thinking about assigning one foreman. So have somebody hired to manage those 3 to 4 crews for you, and then you can start focusing on running the business yourself rather than working in the business. You can work on it. Okay, so focus is another important consideration for operational efficiency. So, marketing should be focused on your golden cohort. So those are your A and your B category customers. Target neighborhoods that are going to be highly profitable as well, where those A and B customers live. And just focus on that. Like just own those neighborhoods. Get your lawn signs there. You can do what's called parketing. So park a wrapped vehicle in that space every evening. People will see it. Put door hangers in that same area as well. And just get it so that people see your brand many, many times. And as you start to gain jobs in that neighborhood, you'll gain a foothold. Word spreads very quickly, and your whole schedule will be full of A and B customers, your desired golden cohort, I call it. Except I wrote there golden cohort. Offering must be focused and scalable. So again, just really focus on limiting your products to just a few, and just get creative with those particular products. And follow the SOPs. Take notes for next year. If you do need to make changes to the SOPs, or you're finding yourself having to make changes in the mid-season, try to minimize the changes a bit. Like if you make too many changes, I find it's more disruptive than it is beneficial. Small tweaks are okay. All right, so as a summary, the metrics, really just focus on a few of them, at least at the beginning, on the important ones: utilization rates, revenues, profits. Those are probably the big ones. And then for your management team, the white space is a big one as well. Systemize your business checklists. I can't stress how beneficial they've been. And again, yeah, just focusing on fewer products. And then hiring, when you hire to your revenue products, as we just saw in a couple slides ago. If your goal is, say, $1 million, let's go back here. Yeah, if your goal is $1 million, then you're going to want to have a good 4 crews lined up for the entire season, and you should be in good shape to get there. If it's only about $150,000 to $200,000, you'd probably get away with just one really solid crew working for about 3 months to get to that number. And then we talked about hiring for certain qualities, again, focusing on what you can't train or can't afford to train. And assign jobs according to people's strengths. That goes without question. If you have a really strong person on a roof line, put that person on those kinds of jobs. And then lastly, with aligning operations with your revenue goals, start with what your goal is. So if your goal is $250,000, do the math, work backwards from there, and figure out how many crews you're going to need to fulfill that number. And then once you've got that number, well, then it's a matter of figuring, okay, how many estimates do I need to send out if I'm expected to close about 30%? How many leads do I need to have if 10% of them are expected to close? So start with the revenue goal, work backwards, and eventually you get the numbers that you need to achieve. And it becomes much more manageable and it's not as daunting of a prospect. All right, that's everything. Does anybody have any questions at all?
I've got a question.
Yeah.
I'm really curious about the way that you can use metrics to improve your training and your installers in their sales. I know here at Big Star Lights, we use a lot of different metrics. We can track all the way from getting a lead through to closing. You could track the total ad spend over how many leads you get. So it can get into you can get a lot of data from it. What are the data that you find the most valuable versus what you would probably discard?
So the biggest ones, it depends on who you're asking or who the data is for. If it's for installers, they need to know budgeted install and budget removal times and compare that to the actuals to see how they're doing. The installers also, it's really important for them to understand the utilization rates. The operations managers should absolutely know that as well, because if you're finding your utilization rates are down to like 60%, that's 40% of the day is not billable. That's going to hurt really quick. So you want to be hitting stuff that's closer to maybe 90%, 85 to 90% in the ideal world. Obviously, there's going to be driving and stuff involved. You can't get a 100% utilization rate, but you should be getting close to 85 or 90. So that's a really big one. And then if you get your accounting to be almost real time, that's important as well. And because, it's such a short season, if you don't know your numbers until a month later, most of the revenue is made in November. A month after that, it's like end of December, and it's too late. So those mistakes are made, and you won't be able to react until next year. Having an idea of what the basic financials are, like your revenue, your cost of goods sold, gross margin, total fixed expenses. Again, don't share all the subcategories, just share the total. And then finally, the bottom line. If you just share those numbers, then people will be able to start painting a good picture of the health of the organization.
That's great. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. I think that is all. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. My email, you can reach out to me there. I'm usually in the community calls as well. So if you're not a member of the BSL community, check that out. And also have a look at some of those resources that are available to you in there. They'll really help with scaling your business. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Have yourself a fantastic evening.